And this is Oscar Terrazas, and I attend the local Rock Church at Elk Grove, California. And I was invited by a pastor out of Panama in order to analyze, go over the abortion ruling, the recent abortion ruling by the Supreme Court. So, of course, it was all in Spanish. And then I was asked that maybe I could translate this into English and come up with a similar presentation. And this pretty much mirrors the presentation. And so here it is. I'll be as brief as possible, but I do want to cover several points that I thought were interesting as I put this whole thing together. And I entitled this then A Short History of Abortion in the United States. So let me share my screen. And all right, there we go. And we'll get right over to a short history of abortion in the United States and, of course, the Bible. How is it that the United States, with its foundations in God and Christianity, and came up to practice abortion? You know, after all, God said, let us make man in our image after our likeness. And in all our public schools, the Pledge of Allegiance so far is recited by children. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God. And so here we have then the actual recital by children that's saying that we're one nation under God. And in Genesis 3:14, God said unto the serpent, because thou hast done this, and thou art cursed above cattle, and above every field, every beast of the field, upon thy belly thou shalt go, and the dust shall not eat all the days of the life. But here in verse 15 is a theological discussion. I will put enmity between thee and the woman, between thy seed and her seed, and it shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel. In other words, there would be a constant fight between God, the devil with humanity. And most interesting is that supposedly the devil has a seed. So what kind of seed are we talking about? And we see this in the fight today in the world, is that man's seed is fighting. And also the devil is helping out in his fight. In Genesis 11:14, also the pride of man wants to rise above God. Let us go and let us make a city, a tower, whose tower may reach above the heavens. So we have this whole struggle going on. For us, like I said, it's brief. So I'm going to start with Charles Darwin, and he wrote a biological book, more or less. Even though he had no degree in biology, he had no degree in theology, he never graduated from a college or university or anything like that, but yet he went out and discovered something on the Galapagos Islands and wrote about it, and all of a sudden it became scientific fact. So in 1859, there was this scientific work. But on the book, and I have it here, then on the origin of species, there was a subtitle to the book. And the subtitle then reads, The Preservation of Favored Races in the Struggle for Life. In other words, Charles Darwin also wanted to show, as we will see now in the following slides, that somehow his humanity, or his little portion of humanity, was superior to other portions of humanity. Or to put it in his terms, his ancestral monkeys evolved first before somebody else's ancestral monkeys. So he was all for then preserving the Anglo-Saxon, Nordic, and Germanic tribes as the superior tribes to everyone else. So don't believe me? Well, let's keep going. His cousin, Francis Darwin, was actually became the father of modern eugenics. And he argued for the practice of artificial selection, weeding out the unfit of the human race, only a few years after the origin of species. So what is eugenics? Well, eugenics then is the study of how to arrange reproduction within a human population to increase the occurrence of heritable characteristics regarding as desirable. Eugenics was discredited after the adoption of doctrines by the Nazis, and I'll speak a little bit more on that. But basically what eugenics is a racist policy. In other words, they want to do with everybody else. And just like the royal bloodlines of Europe, they did not mix with the peasants. They did not mix with the lower classes because they were inferior. And their money proved it, right? Money somehow proves your blood is better than somebody else's blood. And so this is exactly what happened. And this is the study of eugenics. Well, it gets even better. The United States was one of the first countries then to start practicing eugenics. Yep, this theory got into our colleges, our universities, it got into our government, it got into our history. There's books and books written on the policies that came about of eugenics. By the end of World War II, over 400,000 individuals were sterilized under German law. German law? How does that have to do with the United States? Well, Adolf Hitler praised and incorporated the eugenics ideas in his book Mein Kampf and emulated eugenic legislation for the sterilization of defectives that was pioneered in the United States. That's right, our government got involved, our universities got involved. This became a very popular idea again among the rich elite of the time, the Rockefellers, the Harringtons, the other men and families that were very popular. They wanted to eliminate, they thought the best thing to do was to eliminate the poor and the impoverished because poverty was in the blood. Ignorance was in the blood. So Charles Benedict Davenport, and founder of eugenics, was the founder of eugenics in America. And from his writings, we got these quotes. I believe that I am the trustee of the germplasm that I carry, that this has been passed to me through thousands of generations before me, remember, evolution, and that I betrayed the trust of that germplasm, so I act as to jeopardize it with its excellent possibilities or motives for personal convenience, to unduly limit offspring. In other words, what he was saying was, I need to have a lot of kids because after all, my my seed is better than anybody else's seed. Keep going. I believe that having made our choice in marriage carefully, I mean, after all, what does love have to do with it, right? The married pair should seek to have 4 to 6 children in order that our carefully selected germplasm may be reproduced in an adequate degree, and that this preferred stock should not be swamped by that less carefully selected. In other words, arranged marriages, just like in Europe, just like among the royal families. Another man involved in this was Harry Hamilton Laughlin. He was the director of Eugenics Record Office from its inception. Eugenics Record Office? Yeah, Congress actually set this up under the government in order to manipulate, steer, study, report eugenics. The Racial Integrity Act of 1924 required that a racial description of every person be recorded at birth and divided society into 2 classifications, white and colored. Now, eugenics was also against anybody who was white that was not Anglo-Saxon, Germanic, Nordic. In other words, the Irish, the Welsh, the French, the Spanish, they were all white, but nope, they weren't good enough. Their monkeys did not evolve fast enough compared to them. They even had what was known as miscegenation laws, classifying marriage between a white person and a non-white person as a felony. That's right. You could be arrested by the FBI if you were one of these white people that married a colored person, brown, red, black, and you could be arrested and tried as a felony. And these were laws in many of the states of the United States that actually picked up this thinking. Planned Parenthood came as a result of Spring Cold Harbor, another organization I will mention, in which after World War II, under Germany, they found out just how bad this eugenics idea had gone. You know, everybody was blinded scientifically. It was a great idea. And then they found the death camps. And so Planned Parenthood broke out from Spring Cold Harbor, and one of the organizations approved by Congress. And the founder was Margaret Sanger. And here then we have then Margaret Sanger, and she was a proponent of negative eugenics, or in other words, the elimination of defectives. She herself, since she was of the privileged white class, she had 18 pregnancies. Not all the children survived. But anyway, she tried to populate the world. And so was the foundation of Planned Parenthood, was to eliminate any people of white or color that were not of the Anglo-Saxon, Nordic, Germanic people. Let me see if I have, yeah. The Heredity Commission was also sanctioned by Congress, was an advisory group to the United States. It was founded by Willip Hayes, and he was appointed as Secretary of Agriculture and was the founder of the American Breeders Association. Yeah, just like breeding horses and cows and pigs and getting a better animal, so they thought that they could breed a better human. And so the commission was given by Congress that was to investigate all proper means of influencing hereditary for a better the race. It aimed to increase families of good blood and to discourage the vicious elements in crossbred American civilization, the Mangenic laws. In other words, a white person cannot marry a person of color, any color, red, brown, black. The commission was also asked to study, ready for this? If a new species of human being could be consciously evolved. In other words, can we build a tower higher that meets all the way to the heavens? And if you don't believe that it's still going on today, this is actually known as Georgia Stonehenge in Elderbert County in Georgia. And it gave out 10 guides for a better world. And the one guide that it gave, the 12 guides for the world to survive, the number one commandment of the 12 commandments was to bring the population of humanity below 500,000. Well, I guess they didn't envision that right now would be close to 8 billion. So in other words, how do you get rid of 7.5 billion people, or even 7 billion people, to meet this goal? Because there's many even still today that believe that the world is overpopulated, we can't feed them all, and so therefore we got to think of a way of how to eliminate them. Interestingly enough, in the news just last week, somebody went and set a bomb on this place and blew part of it up, and it was so damaged that they went ahead and blew it up some more. And because these granite stones were like 20 tons each that were in this particular monument. So in the Bible, let's switch over to the Bible. Does the Bible speak against abortion? Well, doesn't use the word abortion, just like the Bible don't have the word Trinity. You know, there's no such thing because there is no Trinity. But here we have then, there is abortion, even though the Bible don't speak directly about it. Thou shalt not do so unto the Lord thy God, for every abomination of the Lord which he hateth have they done unto their gods, for even their sons and their daughters they have burnt in the fire. So they had gods of Milcom, and also Moloch was the one we read in various scriptures of the Bible. They were normally made out of metal. Fire was placed on them, the metal was heated up. And of course, these temples, many of them were temples of prostitution. The women would get pregnant, they would have babies, and the babies then were offered to their gods. Well, just like a lot of people follow Hollywood and the Hollywood stars, so all of a sudden people started saying, hey, you know, I really didn't want this child, I can't feed another one, so I'll do something spiritual. I will offer it to the god of Moloch, and they would let their children pass through the fire. So yes, there was a type of abortion in the Old Testament. Exodus 12:1 and 2. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, sanctify unto me the firstborn. Was life then important to God? Yes. He claimed the firstborn to be sanctified. And in the 10 commandments, it reads, thou shalt not kill, or thou shalt not murder. And I'll cover that in just a little bit. And then in Genesis 9, it said, whoever shed man's blood, by his blood shall he be shed. That's how important life was to God. So let's keep going. So in the United States, the Roe versus Wade was enacted in 1973, which was a federal law declaring that all women had a right to abortion. And by the 1980s, we went to 1.5 million abortions a year. It has now declined. We're right around 860,000 abortions a year. Now think about the population of the city you live in, and then think about the statistic that right now we're at 860,000 abortions a year. The cost of an abortion. In California, I looked it up, it's around $750. So in California last year, there was 154,000 abortions multiplied by $750 per abortion. And we have an industry that receives $115 million a year. If we have 160,000 abortions in the United States multiplied by 750, and we have 647,000 abortions a year. So that's really the industry. And part of what's driving this industry and Planned Parenthood is the money. According to the World Health Organization, there are 73 million abortions a year. And the countries that approve it, of course, many of them have socialized health, and it is paid by the government. That's why so many are pushing for socialized health also here in the United States, is they want the government to pay for their abortions. Russia's #1 in the world with 4 million abortions a year. Vietnam #2 at 1.7 million. This map will show you the iconic map from purple on the left here, all the way through a lighter purple, and then the red, and then the orange. There's Russia, and the ones in the middle of this is the abortion rate per 1,000 women. Notice that South America, Central America, and a lot of Africa is gray. That's because in many countries, abortion is illegal, but we'll talk about that in just a little bit. So now what? Well, the Supreme Court of the United States rescinded the federal right for women to have an abortion. The vote was 5-4. The legal right to have an abortion now passes to the states. So for the last 50 years, some states have not updated their abortion laws because it was under federal law. The states that have abortion laws now have limited times for abortion. So in other words, even under federal law, the state had the right to say, okay, you can get an abortion to 12 weeks, 20 weeks, 24 weeks. They limited as to when an abortion could happen in their particular state. For the states now that have had really no update of their laws for the last 50 years, they're caught and they're going to have to then say, hold on, let's get a law down. We need to update our laws. They're 50 years old. What are we going to permit for a woman to have an abortion? But a woman can have an abortion in more than 22 states of the United States. So in California and New York, they're moving to change their laws so women can choose to have late-term abortions as much as 30 weeks. So pay attention to these numbers a little bit, because I'm going to cover both the spiritual and the biological application of birth. So in New York, they're even speaking about a woman having an abortion right before she gives birth. That's right. Even right before she gives birth, as long as the baby isn't born, then she can have an abortion or terminate the pregnancy or interrupt the pregnancy. So now these states are going to it. But a woman right now, under the laws that California has and New York has, a woman can have an abortion if she so wanted to. But now it falls under the state laws instead of the federal laws, which is the reason why some of these states are now ramping up and updating their laws. So all of this protest and everything, what is this fight? What is the seed of Satan fighting the seed of woman? I mean, obviously the devil wants to kill off as many people as he can. And so abortion is one of those ways of controlling the population. You just don't have them be born in the first place. So in less than 68 countries report abortions in the world. And many countries it's illegal because it's illegal, therefore they don't report, even though some sources say they're still having abortions. So Central and South America and parts of Africa don't report, either because they can't or because it is illegal. So in the United States, the question is not, can a woman have an abortion? That's not the question. All of this protesting going on, I mean, what a bunch of hot air and baloney. A woman can have an abortion right now. After the repeal of Roe versus Wade, she can have an abortion. But when in the pregnancy can I have an abortion? That is the real question. When in the pregnancy can a woman have an abortion? A normal pregnancy is 280 days, 40 weeks, or 9 months. That's a normal pregnancy going to term. So here we have a map. Another graphic that I showed that I took off the internet. And all the light colored ones that you see here in the middle, they are less than 22 weeks, or excuse me, 20 weeks, that a woman must have an abortion within the first 20 weeks, or she's not allowed to have an abortion. A doctor could be arrested, his license can be taken, a woman can be arrested at that time. Then you got the little bit darker colors, and this is where California is, and that is 24 weeks. Note the dates, the weeks. I want to get into that in just a little bit. And then the other ones are 20 to 24 weeks, depending on a doctor's recommendation. And then the darker colored ones are 30 weeks. Remember, a regular term abortion, pregnancy is 40 weeks. So in Oregon, Colorado, New Mexico, New Jersey, Vermont, New Hampshire, Alaska, these right now are at 30 weeks. If a woman wanted an abortion that late, she could actually go to Oregon, go to New Jersey, and have an abortion with the permission of a doctor and abort her baby. I'm going to say baby. At this point, I don't know how in the world, and I'll prove it to you, how they can say fetus is beyond me. So you see, all of this protest is the seed fighting against the seed. It's man and his pride and sacrifice to the God of his own knowledge. Obviously, if you're a Christian, you would preserve a life. I don't see how in the world you could say, and I'll show it to you right now, how in the world you could say that a pregnancy is just a ball of flesh, that it's a fetus, that it is a zygote. Whatever medical terms you want to use, I will show you different in just a little bit. In Israel, God's people, all a woman has to do is go to the government and say, hey, you know what? I want an abortion. And in 99.6% of the time, she is approved. That's right. In the land of Israel, the land of God, God's people, Israeli women now following the footsteps like they would Hollywood, following the footsteps of the United States, they're also protesting. What are they protesting about? They can already get an abortion. They have it in Israel, for crying out loud. The United States laws don't affect. Roe versus Wade didn't take away anything in the country, independent country of Israel, but yet you have them here in Hebrew and writing, oh, woman's right and everything else. Nobody took it away. All it is the seed fighting the seed. So when is a pregnancy a human? When is the fetus or baby a human? When does life start? That's the real question. When does life start? At birth or conception? At birth or conception? 1 day, 4 weeks, 12 weeks, 20 weeks? So let me take a little side note. And I'm going to compare this to the biology, okay? So I got this from a rabbinical site, and in which they compared the cycle of festivals on the Hebrew calendar compared to the gestation period or the pregnancy in a woman, okay? And I'm going to have to explain a little bit of the calendar so it'll make sense. I have this in another presentation. If you ever want to see some of my other presentations on this, it's under Oscar John Terrazas on YouTube, and you can see the other one on the festivals of God. So I'm going to just cover it briefly. And if this is confusing, just repeat it and rewind, and you can repeat it. So in Leviticus 23 is the speaking of one of the places where the Bible speaks about the festivals of God. In the 14th day of the first month, it is the Lord's Passover. So the first month, 14 days, is Passover. The 7 days of unleavened bread. And then you go all the way to Pentecost and the Feast of First Fruits. And then you go all the way to the Feast of Trumpets on the 7th month, the first day. And it goes on. I'll explain to you right now. And so this is where you get it in Scripture, is in that part. And there's one more that's basically not in Scripture, and that is the festival of Hanukkah. And Hanukkah at the 9th month is the 8-day Jewish celebration that commemorates the rededication during the 2nd century BC, because the temple had been destroyed. And the second temple was rededicated. And so this was done under the Maccabean revolt, and they came up with a festival called Hanukkah, or the Feast of Lights. So let me do a little comparison. Now, the Jewish calendar is a little weird for us because, number one, it starts with month 1, but month 1 has different days, just like our calendar, but it starts at the spring equinox. So you can see here the 9 months: Nisan, Iyar, Sivan, Tammuz, Av, Elul, Tishri, Sheshvan, and Kislev. And if you add that up, that's 280 days, the gestation period of pregnancy. And then it starts in the spring. So here's the weird part. The first month and the first day is actually the spring equinox, according to this Jewish rabbinical site. But it is not the new year. The new year is the 7th month and the first day, or Tishri. It's Tishri. That's the Feast of Trumpets, the new year, Rosh Hashanah. But now, according to Exodus 12, God started the calendar in spring. So that is Nisan, in the month of Nisan 1. And there's a couple of things that make it a little more weird, but I won't get into that. You have to look at some of my other videos. Anyway, so 14 days is Nisan 14. 7 days is the festival. And let me click on there. The March equinox right now is about March 22. Notice I said right now. April 4th is usually Passover, right about in there, 3rd, 4th, 5th. Nisan 21, the Feast of Unleavened Bread. 50 days later from Passover is Pentecost. Sivan 6, more or less. And Tishri 1, which is the new year, the 7th month, is trumpets. And then 10 days to atonement. And then on the 15th day of the 7th month is tabernacles for 7 days. And then finally, around December 21st is Hanukkah. No, that's not Christmas, unless you're Messianic Jew, but that is their festival of the Maccabean revolt and the rededication of the temple, also known as the Festival of Lights. So this gives you a breakdown of the 9 months from Nisan 1 all the way to Kislev, and then let's go on. So the spring equinox, I put the calendar here, only this time, if the egg appears in the woman, because the woman can only get pregnant anywhere from 12 to 14 days during her cycle. If she's not fertilized at that time, or the egg is not fertilized, then she passes it on. She menstruates, and the egg passes on. If it does, then in those 7 days, the egg attaches to the uterus. If it's not fertilized, it's like unleavened bread. It passes out. And then there's no life in the bread with leaven, as in Pentecost. And so now we have the egg attaches to the uterus. Then Pentecost, at 10 weeks, the fetus looks human at Pentecost. At 12 weeks, then during this time is also the Feast of First Fruits for 7 days. At 12 weeks, note the days again, and the weeks, there is a heartbeat, and the sex can be determined. A lot of women like to know what kind of, whether they're having a boy or a girl. And so this is when it can be determined. Then at the Feast of Trumpets, the New Year, a baby can hear. Notice that? Trumpets, it can hear. And then at the Feast of Atonement, which is a sacrifice and a solemn occasion, then at 26 weeks, the baby has its own circulation. If a baby were to be born at this time, it can actually be a preemie and be kept alive medically. And there's a very high chance of the baby having life and continuous life. Is just early. And then at 27 weeks, the Feast of Tabernacles, the week of festivals and partying and joyfulness, the baby has lungs and can actually sustain itself outside the mother. Then at the 9th month, the baby is born and sees the light, or the Festival of Lights, Hanukkah. So this rabbinical group actually compared the biological cycle of pregnancy with the 9 months of festivals between the starting of the year, Passover, unleavened bread, Pentecost, first fruits, trumpets, atonement, tabernacles, Hanukkah, in the birth cycle. Isn't that amazing? I mean, this just floored me when I read this and studied it out, and I have studied it out. But let's take now the biological cycle so I can wrap this up. So the semen causes fertilization and conception. And I want you to know that from the man comes 50,000 to 100,000 semen enter the uterus, and only one seed of man, only one out of 50,000 to 100,000, only one of those created you. Your DNA, your genealogy, all starts at the point that particular one seed of man enters the seed of woman. Your hair color, your eye color, your height, everything that's you was started at this point. And then in the feast of unleavened bread, then afterwards, if it is fertilized, then it begins then to multiply within 6 days of conception. By 4 weeks, the umbilical cord is formed, and a pregnancy test from the local pharmacy will come out positive. The heart is formed. You can see that they're in the middle at 5 weeks. At 6 weeks, we have then this little form that's there. By 7 weeks, we have toes and fingers, and we have the heart appearing more. You see the umbilical cord at 7 weeks. At 7 weeks. At 8 weeks, we got liver, lungs, heart, organs are formed and continue to be formed. At 12 weeks, the mother and the doctors can hear the heartbeat and the sex can be determined. At 16 weeks, the eyelids open and close, and they're now determined fingerprints on the baby. In other words, those fingerprints that are the only fingerprints out of 8 billion people in the world is your fingerprints. They're formed by 16 weeks in the pregnancy, identifying you as the only one with those fingerprints. Think about that. At 20 weeks, the major part of the brain is formed. The baby can feel pain and sensation and can respond to sound. So if there's a big boom or bang outside the pregnant mother, then the baby would react and be startled by the sound. At 24 weeks, this is a picture of a sonogram, we have complete facial feature. At 28 weeks, the baby now is beginning to turn. At 36 weeks, the baby's preparing for birth to see the light. And at 40 weeks, we have a baby from 38 to 41 weeks in there, depending on who counted right. We have the birth of a baby. So I want you to take you back to that slide that I had, in which now California, New York is going out and wants to have abortion beyond 20 to 24 weeks. They want to go to 30 weeks. They want to go to 36 weeks. And biologically, what I just showed you, number one, is it a human at 24 weeks? Is it a human at 20 weeks? If it's not a human, then why is it that we can have DNA transfer within the first 6 days of conception? Why are you the only one of that one seed that was implanted in the egg of a woman, in the ovum of a woman? Biblically, in the festivals of God, we see then that it is formed even in the festivals of God and the timing of God. Isn't that amazing? And that when God set the planet, the earth, the rotation around the sun, our year, our seasons, and the seasons he put in the law of Moses would be exactly like the gestation of the pregnancy of a woman. Our God is amazing. Well, I pray this be a blessing to you. Check some of my other videos out if you want to know about the festivals. Oscar John Terrazas. And until next time, may the Lord be with you and bless you greatly.